Chair now recognizes Mr. Case.
Chair Holland, Ranking Member Westerman, and members of our subcommittee, aloha from Hawaii, and thank you very much for allowing me to testify today in support of HR 7045, the bill that I've introduced with my colleague, Congresswoman Gabbard, to instruct the U.S. Forest Service to conduct a study to identify parcels of land in Hawaii that could be incorporated into a national forest and help the national forest system fulfill its mission in new ways. Soon you will hear from Bob Masuda, the first deputy of the Department of Land and Natural Resources, who has been a longstanding champion of a national forest in Hawaii. And I welcome him here with you today. Our Hawaii is the most isolated island chain and one of the most ecologically diverse places in our entire world. Within our constrained border, we have 10 of the 13 world climate zones, ecosystems ranging from the deserts to the tropics, where plants and animals that found their way to Hawaii evolved like nowhere else. A 2014 survey identified 9,975 endemic species in Hawaii, many of which are reliant on our fragile ecosystem to survive. However, since the onset of human arrival, especially in the last centuries, Hawaii has lost almost half of our native forest cover. Despite the threats to our unique biodiversity, Hawaii remains one of a handful of states that does not have a national forest. Invasive species have also posed a threat to our forests and biodiversity that the Forest Service can help address. The threat to our state tree, the ohia lehua, is illustrative of our growing crisis. Used for poi boards and outrigger canoes and many other uses, the ohia lehua is important to Hawaiian culture and our island watersheds. Ohia grows throughout the watershed, creating new soils, stabilizing steep mountain ridges, and comprises approximately 80% of our native forests. However, rapid ohia death, or ROD, caused by an invasive fungal pathogen, kills ohia trees quickly and threatens the stability of our native forests. Since its discovery on the Big Island in 2014, ROD has spread to Kauai, Maui, and Oahu, and has killed hundreds of thousands of trees. Despite these threats, our federal government does not have a way to adequately protect these unique tropical forest ecosystems. The National Forest Service offers a way to better manage these forests. The system currently comprises 154 national forests, 20 national grasslands, and several other federal land designations containing 193 million acres. However, it currently does not include any land in Hawaii. The National Forest Service could help Hawaii's forests simply by performing its core mission to conserve land for a variety of uses, to include watershed management, research, cultural site preservation, wildlife habitat management, and research and outdoor recreation. Establishing a national forest in Hawaii would provide research, cultural, and commercial opportunities in Hawaii. It would expand upon the Hawaii Experimental Tropical Forest by providing greater support for tropical forest conservation and research throughout the Hawaiian Islands. It would provide greater public access to lands for recreational activities and cultural practices, and it would help Hawaii diversify our economy away from our reliance on tourism. My bill provides the first step in establishing a national forest in Hawaii. It would help inventory where Hawaii's native koa, ohia, and sandalwood forests can be conserved and expanded for current cultural and commercial practices. It would help identify where cultural sites could be better conserved and access expanded to the public and practitioners. It would help provide the basis to bring together local stakeholders to move forward the conversation of how to responsibly establish a national forest in Hawaii in a manner that will benefit both Hawaii's island communities and our National Forest Service. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak on behalf of our bill. I'm hopeful that this measure will begin the process of establishing the long overdue first national forest in Hawaii and adequately conserving some of the most unique and precious forest resources in our world. Mahalo, and I yield back.
Okay.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to testify today in support of HR 7045, a bill to study lands that could be included in a new national forest in Hawaii. I am Bob Masuda, First Deputy Director of the Hawaii Department of Land and Natural Resources. We support enactment of HR 7045. We feel the study will provide valuable information and insight into land conservation options in Hawaii. I ask that my entire testimony be submitted for the record. For brevity, I would like to summarize my presentation. Hawaii is one of only 8 states without a national forest or national grasslands. Therefore, Hawaii offers an opportunity to expand the scope of the national forest system to include the unique ecosystems of the tropical Pacific. The citizens of Hawaii share a passion for the lands and resources that have sustained our islands for generations. It's ingrained into our culture and outlook. Like other island people around the world, we understand we live with finite resources on a limited land base. Living on isolated islands, we are particularly sensitive to the threats posed by pollution, climate change, and invasive species. We know that the conservation of our terrestrial and marine resources is necessary for the quality of life we now enjoy and for future generations. We believe Hawaii's existing forest reserves, watershed, and endangered species protection programs would align well with the national forests in Hawaii. The state and the U.S. Forest Service already have a successful record of ongoing collaboration in tropical forestry research. In 1992, Congress passed the Hawaii Tropical Forest Recovery Act to further research in tropical ecosystems and to designate lands for research purposes. In 1994, the state and the Forest Service completed an action plan that identified Hawaii's unique ecological resources, conservation opportunities, and areas for cooperative research. In 2007, 2 experimental tropical forests for wetland forests and dryland forests, comprising over 51,000 acres, were established on state-owned land on the Big Island. World-class forest research is being conducted on those areas by the Forest Service Institute of Pacific Islands Forestry located in Hilo. National forest management of appropriate lands could meet some of the objectives identified in the 1994 action plan, such as combating invasive species and animals, restoration of lands adversely affected by logging, overgrazing, and intensive agriculture, reestablishment of sustainable forestry, such as co-production, and watershed protection. HR 7045 is a modest proposal. It only authorizes a study. It will not establish any new national forest. It will not acquire any land, and its potential is largely aspirational. Yet, the study can identify resource protection opportunities and better educate landowners and the public about options for managing our unique island resources. We in Hawaii would welcome this opportunity to work with the Forest Service. In closing, as you consider the future of land conservation in Hawaii, allow me to share with you the motto of our state, which seems particularly apt to these proceedings. And it reads, Ua mau ke ea o ka aina I ka pono, which translates from Hawaiian into English as the life of the land is perpetuated in righteousness. Also in closing, I would like to thank Congressman Case, whose family for many, many generations have been champions and advocates for our natural and cultural resources. Thank you, Congressman Case, and thank all of you for allowing me this opportunity for natural resource and cultural protection.
There you go. The chair will recognize Mr. Lowenthal for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank all my colleagues. I think find this a fascinating hearing. And I also want to thank all the witnesses. And I am very supportive of what we're trying to do here. But let me start with clarify some things. And I want to start first with Mr. Masuda. I want to thank you too, specifically for being here with us and your testimony. I think you stated that Hawaii's state forest reserves and ongoing watershed, and talked about, and also the endangered species protection programs, how they would align perfectly with the establishment of a national national forests in Hawaii. Based on your experience at the Department of Land and Natural Resources, can you briefly speak to some of the research that's being conducted at Hawaii's 2 experimental forests and how Representative Case's proposal would help further that mission of what's going on?
Sure, I'm happy to. Our State Department of Land and Natural Resources are mainly a land management and restoration, preservation, conservation organization. We don't have the capacity for science research that the U.S. Forest Service's Institute for Pacific Islands Forestry has. The Pacific Islands, the Institute for Pacific Islands Forestry, located on the University of Hawaii Hilo campus on the Big Island, has been our go-to place for cooperative science research. Entomologists, hydrologists, all of those kinds of solid science folks and our staff work together in, for example, in our watershed protection. Congressman Case referred to Ohia Lehua and the current scourge that we have decimating 80% of our native forests, which is our watershed, is comprised of Ohia Lehua trees. Ohia Lehua is being decimated by a particular rust. We have a major group of people, including the Forest Service research folks, along with the Agricultural Research Center folks who have pathologists, which we don't have, working together in helping to control this, because Ohia Lehua protects our watershed. As I'm often reminding our friends, our boards of water supply transmit water. They transmit water. They don't provide water. It's our forests in partnership with our atmosphere that helps provide the water that fills our aquifers. Without our forests and healthy forests, it's not going to happen. And we would be subject to some pretty serious things being an island. And working with with not having a national forest, we are limited to where our U.S. Forest Service folks can do their research over extended time. So back in 2007, we worked together with the Forest Service in using on a cooperative agreement. So the Forest Service is using state land for conducting research for a number of universities. Some of the top universities in the country have research being conducted in our wetland forests and our dryland forests. We have 2 distinct types of forests on island systems. And this research would be potentially expanded in such a way that the U.S. Forest Service's research capability, through working with the National Forest System, because the R&D sector does not have national forests. They don't manage national forests. And so we need a national forest so that we can have a federal forest system in which our research scientists at the Institute can have continuous research without having to worry about private lands or state lands going through different changes. And so those kinds of cooperative things should be explored and need to be explored. And I guess my most passionate point to you would be, consider that our contiguous 48 states, and I've gone to school and worked on the mainland, so I love the seasons and all of that, and I miss the season.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the globe, the midriff of the globe, if you will, is our tropical zone. And besides our Puerto Rico territory and the state of Hawaii, there exists no tropical forest research areas.
In the United
Yet, the many of our countries around the world in the tropics lack the capability and the capacity that we in America have. having national forests with a tropical emphasis would allow our scientists from America to work with people from underprivileged countries who we want as our friends. Instead of sending armies, let's send scientists. Let's help our friends rebuild and restore their forests for a healthy planet. And that's where I believe very strongly that a national forest in Hawaii, with being in a tropical area, provides a opportunity that we don't have right now. And we appreciate Congressman Case's effort on this because he grew up here. He's been in the rivers and the ocean and the mountains of Hawaii. He knows what it's like and he knows its limitations, but its potential. And we should all remember that our world has gone from a continental mentality, while we still live by continental value systems. Our globe is now an island.
Mhm.
You know, we are dependent all over the globe, and I think our country can provide leadership in tropical forest research in countries that don't have that capability. So
You make a very, very strong case. Madam Chair, I don't have a clock in front of me. Do I have any time left to do a follow-up question?
You are 2 minutes over, Mr. Lowenthal.
I thought I might be, but it was fascinating.
I'm sorry, I talked too
No,
much.
you should never be sorry. It was fascinating. I yield back.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. It was worth every second, Mr.
That's
Masuda.
exactly right.